Welcome to Real with me, Zara King. I have been in business and personal development for years alongside raising my family. I started in the beauty industry in 2011, moved into network marketing and then coaching and NLP. This podcast originally began helping beauty professionals, and now I support ambitious women in a wider arena of service-based businesses. It is all about real, uncensored conversations on coming home to you and your alignment. You are done playing at a level that you know you've outgrown, and you're ready to go all in on creating more income, more freedom, mental clarity, and a business that actually works for your life. Inside this podcast, we talk real business, real life, and the hard parts most people avoid, from identity to strategy and what it actually takes to grow as women and mothers who want it all. So if you're ready to trust yourself fully and step into your next level, you're in the right place.
Hello, you gorgeous human you. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you're good. I hope you're well. I hope your business is being super kind to you. Now, today I want to answer a question that I think some people are way too polite to ask. And that question is, why should I work with you? Especially if I'm already established. Why am I going to hire a coach if I've already got clients? If I've already been in this industry for 10 years? Why am I going to invest in support if my business is already working, or it seems to be? Why would I need help if I'm already experienced? And it's such a good question, because I think sometimes the coaching industry can make it sound like support is only for you if you don't know what you're doing, and actually that is not the case. It's like sometimes you think you hit a certain level and that's it, like you know everything. But again, that is just not the case. Like, you're never going to have all the answers. You're supposed to be able to figure things out for yourself as time goes on. Yes. Okay. But it's not fully true, because in fact, I actually think the opposite is true. I actually think the more established you become, the more important proximity to somebody else does become, because you need more important perspective, you need shifts, you need more help with blind spots, and when you're so close to your business, you can't do that for yourself. And likewise, when you're brand new in your business, your problems are quite obvious, right? You need the clients, you need the confidence, you need the experience, but then you also need to market, sell. And those gaps are really visible. Yeah, you can see them. Everybody can see them. But when you've been in business for X amount of years, those gaps become a little bit more nuanced, a little bit smaller, a little bit more subtle, a little bit more kind of harder to identify. And that is when people get frustrated. They're good at what they do. They've done this for many years, but because they can't see what they can't bloody see, they don't know why they're not growing, you know? So that's what we're going to talk about today. That is what we're going to talk about today. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever looked back at an older version of yourself, like say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and have you ever thought, oh my God, I cannot believe I used to do that? Probably. Or maybe you've looked back and thought as well, on the flip side of that, I genuinely thought that was a great idea. I thought that was the best way to do things. But you still laugh now because you're like, obviously I know better now. Yeah. But at the time, obviously you couldn't see that. Of course you couldn't, but now you can. And that's just a little blind spot. And all of us has that type of thing. Every single one of us, including me. You know, I have coaches, I have mentors, I invest to be in different spaces. I invest in proximity with certain people, not because I don't know what I'm doing, but because, you know, like, I can't always see my own blind spots. I can't always get myself out of some problems, and neither can you. And this came up recently with a client, and she's, you know, so good at what she does, years of experience, really respected, gets fucking great results and has very happy clients. And obviously she's come to me wanting to grow. And here's what I find super interesting about it. Well, do you know what? She thought she needed visibility, right? And I find it really interesting because everybody thinks like this. She thought she needed more content. She might have even hired a social media manager, she said. She thought she needed more followers. She thought she needed like that type of thing. But actually, like, the followers are fine. The vanity metrics don't matter as much. She's putting out decent content. She doesn't need someone to really do it for her because it doesn't stress her out. It was completely different. It was just a little tweak. in that realm of her business, it was a tweak with her positioning. Yeah. But because she's so close to her own business, she couldn't see that she was getting stuck in this space of just sounding like everybody else. And she'd hit a wall, she'd hit that kind of like income ceiling. And because she was just so close to her own business, she was just trying to think, bigger and differently, and like, oh, if I had more following, and and she couldn't really see that she could do this. Like I said, she's so brilliant. She's capable. She's pretty good at what she does. She's intelligent. She's brilliant. But she was, looking at this from a place of, not being able to actually see what was going on. That is all. And that is what a lot of people are doing. They're trying to figure out what they need, but they're completely immersed in their business and in the day-to-day mundane activity. And they're so emotionally connected to it as well. So they can't make that tough decision. Sometimes they do know, actually. I just want to caveat this just for a sec because my brain has gone here. Sometimes they do know, they've got an inkling about what they need to do, but part of them is too scared to even do that as well. So that's another side of this. But let's just talk about like this particular client, because she needed to build a little bit more authority. And I know a lot of you guys listening are already established in what you do. You've got experience, you've got the credibility, you've got the expertise, and I absolutely love that. But when you've been doing something for years, you can start assuming things. You start to get complacent and you start making assumptions that your audience knows things about you that they don't know. You can assume that your clients understand the way you write things. And I'm just going to say, I have been here. I'm still here, right? There are times I run my content by one of my coaches and I'm like, they'll say to me, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, obviously I mean this. And I'm like, well, no one knows that. I'm like, oh shit, I do it too. You can assume that people get it. You can assume that you're speaking clearly. You can assume that people see your value, because as you change and grow and as you understand it more, you think everybody else does too. And you assume people know why you're bloody great and why you're different and why you should hold this authority. And actually those assumptions are a bit of a problem. And they can be costing you clients and they can be costing you money and, that type of thing. So the things that might feel obvious to you are basically often the things that your audience don't understand, and they need to understand it. Yeah. And so when someone like me comes in from the outside and says, hang on a minute, like it's brilliant, but we've probably just missed that bit, or you understand that, but they don't, and you didn't explain that bit just right, and these little things, and actually that's the main part that they're going to want to hear. That changes things in your authority, that changes things in your positioning. And when I'm like, what's the point? If you're a client of mine listening to this, you're probably going to laugh, because I'll come back to you and be like, what was the point of this one, by the way, babe? And the second that people come with me and work with me, and we refine these things, and I bloody love it, they start to see and they start to tweak and they start to realize that it's like, we're not building it again from scratch. I'm not asking you to do 10,000 new things that you've never done before. We're actually just making you even fucking better, because you're already great at what you do. But it's like that difference between like making something excellent and it just being like good, that's the difference. It's like spending those sort of months and years like refining and making those tiny improvements that make massive impact. And that is what I love the most about what I do. It's like tiny little shifts create massive results, whether it's the internal work, the external work. Obviously with this client, it was more about the positioning type of thing and the authority. But that's what happens in the space. I'm not reinventing everything for you. Sometimes we reinvent stuff. Sometimes you need to have a brand new strategy because you've never done something before, and you come to me for that. And it might be that we're mapping out your online offer, and you want to just start dipping your toe in to stop trading your time for money. And that is often what is going on in my spaces as well. And therefore, We are inventing some new stuff, and that's pretty cool. But most of the time, we are refining, we are simplifying, we are stepping into the next level version of yourself. And that feels uncomfortable too, by the way. So we have to remove some baggage, and we have to tighten some stuff up, and we make things a little bit cleaner. And, that growth isn't always going to be adding more to your plate. It's going to be removing certain things as well. And, sometimes you need somebody to tell you what it is that you can let go and what it is that you can do more of. Sometimes it'll be with my clients that they don't need any more offers. They don't need any more services. They think they might, but they don't. And like this client of mine, for example, did not need any more content. She did not need to be going into the route of paying £1,000 a month for a content manager. I mean, if you do that, by the way, no shade, because anything you can take off your plate, go for it. But she didn't need to be doing that. She didn't need to keep spreading herself too thin. A lot of you also think when it comes to the positioning side of it, just because I'm there and my brain's there, you think you've got to be on every single platform. I spoke to a client the other day, actually a different client, and she was saying like she's on every single platform. And I was just like, do you need to be? Do you want to be? Does it light you up? Because actually what's more important is the energy that you're in when you're putting out your content on each of those bloody platforms anyway. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, anyway, I digress. But the thing is, it's like, I come in not to be like, this is how you do your job, not to be like better than you. I come in to be like, oh, okay, I think in this area we need to be doing actually probably a little bit less, and we need to simplify. Let's remove half of this. Let's focus, 9 times out of 10 it is a lot of simplifying and focusing and removing, honestly. And then other things, it's like, okay, that needs to be learned. Yeah, so let's just strip it back and stop making everything so fucking complicated, because then we're just going to procrastinate, and then we're going to be confused, and then we're not going to do anything, and then we're going to slow down. Let's simplify it to scale and actually go from there and then build. Yeah, because you have to do that. I think when you're building a business, if you're starting out from scratch and you're wanting to say to me, I need to get to like the 5k months or whatever, there are a few things that you need to focus on and get rid of everything else, literally. And then when you go up from there, it's like, okay, now we need to simplify more to scale more. And that's how it goes. So yeah, that's another reason. And the other thing I want to talk about as well in this episode is obviously not only those like blind spots and somebody helping you with the decision making, simplifying or adding things in or whatever it is, but also like the other thing is proximity. Now, you probably have heard like people online saying things like paying to be in someone's space or proximity. That's what it means, like in a close connection with a certain person. You might have even heard somebody say like paying to be in the room, to get in the room or get in the energy. And whilst part of that is true, what the real part of this is, okay, it's not, you shouldn't just be paying shit ton of money to be in someone's energy, okay? I'm just going to put it out there. There needs to be strategy. There needs to be frameworks. There needs to be help. There needs to be, actual tangible stuff for you. You don't just pay to be in the room or be in someone's energy, in my opinion. But what it does mean, and what I do agree with, is you are the average of the people that you spend the most time around. Now that, you've heard that before, that is very true. And the environment that you're in really matters massively, like hugely, right? Because if the people around you are playing small, if the people around you have a lot of limiting beliefs about business, money, working online, your industry, your services, whatever it might be, eventually in your brain, that is what you deem to be normal. And I hear it all the time when people say to me, oh, my partner thinks I'm mad for doing X, Y, and Z. I've had it myself. Or my family won't pay my prices. It's out of their budget. Right, okay. Do you know what I mean? Like that type of thing, being around people that aren't necessarily understanding of what you do and why you do what you do, or just around people that are negative, that are, not so growth minded, eventually that is just going to kind of knock away at your confidence at doing the thing that you want to do and creating the success that you want to create, you know, and then you're going to end up, for example, getting to a certain part of your career or getting to a certain level of growth in your business and then pausing and stopping and settling. Yeah. And eventually you're going to be fucking annoyed at yourself because you're ambitious. You're so ambitious and you're going to be like, why did I do that? You know, but for example, when I was building my business, most of the people around me would be like, oh my God, £3,000 a month. Are you joking? That's impossible. 4,000. Oh my God, are you joking? Like, that's impossible. And I'm like, no, that's normal. You know, why did I believe that to be true? Because I surrounded myself by other women that were bold, brave, showing up, making tough decisions, getting themselves seen online, pivoting their businesses during the COVID situation, you know, taking matters into their own hands and deciding and going, I'm going to do it anyway. You know, having uncomfortable conversations, raising their prices, launching new things, launching different offers, you know, going live, growing their businesses, everything like that I surrounded myself became my new normal. And that was great for me because the people around me weren't doing that for me. I'm not going to lie. Family and friends. I grew up in like a standard council estate. Me and my partner worked so fucking hard, and we bought in, what year was it? I was 24. No, I wasn't. That's a lie. 24, 23, 24. Can't remember how old I was, but I was young when I bought my own house. And, you know, the people around me weren't buying their own houses and stuff. They weren't building businesses in that. You know, it was you have to put yourself in a different position. And I did that. I surrounded myself with different people, different friends that were doing the things I wanted to do. Yeah, I was doing that. And that became the normal, the growth, the like stretchiness, the being out of my comfort zone, that expansion of the comfort zone and stepping into something for yourself. It's scary at first, but that is why I do surround myself with the people that are doing it and that have done it before me. And that is what it means when you see people saying things like invest in proximity, invest in being in the room and the energy, whatever you want to call it. It's not because someone is better than you. For example, if you come into my world, it is not because I'm just going to tell you what to do and I think I'm better than you and I've done it before and I'm better at business than you. No, you know your services, you know how you want your life to look, but I will help you raise those standards and make those tough decisions and make you think a bit bigger and challenge your thinking, which can be uncomfortable at times, by the way. And if you're a client of mine, you know, because sometimes that's what you need. That is what you need. If you want to scale your business, you come to me because, you know, you've built something already successful, but you have become the issue. Like, you are the bottleneck of your business. Everything's running through you. Every decision, every client, every problem, every question, every admin task, everything is running through you, and it becomes super exhausting. Of course it does. But what got you to this point isn't what's going to get you to the next point. And you're not going to scale the business by doing more and more and more and more. You have to change as a person, which is why I always talk about the business will only grow as much as you do as a person. You are never going to see a business that outgrows you. Yeah, you have to become different. You have to think differently, lead yourself and your day differently, prioritize things a bit differently, and you have to move from being one person to being that next level version of yourself. And it's not always comfortable. And when you come into my world, for example, you are going to feel like, you know, you've got things to learn. Yeah, the work is going to feel like there's a bit more of it at first. It's because we need to get productive. We need to get things done. And then what we do is we break things down and simplify things like I've spoken about, so that we're doing the useful things, the helpful things, rather than just the busy work. And so we want you to think in that way, right? To think in a more helpful way so that you can make the decisions in a more helpful way, looking ahead to what the goal is and making sure that everything we do is serving the end goal. So we create those systems eventually, but at first you come into somebody's world and you're like, yes, I've got work to do here. Right? And then you know how to solve more problems. And then you have this huge identity shift, massive identity shifts, and you move and you scale from that place. Yeah? That is what it looks like. And that is why I will always say having somebody that can see what you can't see, having somebody that's not emotionally attached to your business, especially while you've got to make identity shifts, it is so important. Yeah, because you're not going to feel comfortable when you're doing it. Something else I want you to know as well, like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, but I have literally done this for years and I should be able to figure this out myself. I just want to ask you, like, why? Why do you honestly put that pressure on yourself to figure everything out yourself? I mean, don't get me wrong, I've actually been there myself, which is why I'm kind of smiling as I say this. It's like, why do we have to do everything alone? Why do we think that asking somebody else for support somehow means that we're not as good or that we're less capable? I never really understand it, but obviously I have that issue. I have had that issue myself and I have avoided change. But the most successful people that I know and the people that get the best results with me are the ones that take the support and they actually, they want a different perspective and they want to be challenged. They want their thought processes to be challenged, they have coaches upon coaches, mentors and communities and masterminds, and that's it's why I always invest in the places that I do, because those people around me, I learn from everybody that is in my coaches spaces, because those people can do things that I can't, or they can see what I can't, and everything they're doing in their business might inspire me. And it's just really important, it's really, really, really important to get those perspective shifts and have those kind of gaps filled and help with that decision-making process. A lot of it is kind of like the batting back and forth ideas and refining and feedback and sometimes the uncomfortable stuff too. And it changes everything. So my point of this conversation is, I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but the point of the conversation is, if you have already got an established business, if you've already built something really fucking great and you've got the experience and the clients and the credibility and you don't know whether like having support is relevant for you, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions, okay? First and foremost, can I see every single blind spot in my business? Secondly, can I see every single opportunity that I'm potentially missing? Can I clearly see the fastest route to my next level? Can I see what the bottleneck is, i.e. what the main issue holding me back is? Can I see what clearly needs to be changed and refined? Because if the answer is no to any of those, then maybe you are avoiding change. Maybe you need somebody to give you that support and accelerate what we need to do in the business and get you there faster, with a little bit less stress and a little bit more fun and a little bit more better decision making, Anyway, I will leave it there for you today. If it resonates, as always, please take a screenshot, pop it on your stories and tag me, because I love to see who's listening and I love to know your thoughts. And again, I'm going to keep saying this now at the end of every episode, please leave us a review. I would be massively grateful if you did. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I'll see you in the next one.